this year's going to be good. Just wait till next year. 2020 is going to be amazing. So many trips. Mycenae, Hattusas, Peru, Göbekli Tepe, Mexico, the Moche Pyramids, Çatalhöyük, the lost city of Ani. Spring turns to summer, summer to winter, then back to autumn for a bit and on to spring again, before heading back into winter.
You there, mortal, heed my words.
Who are you?
Why, I'm the wizard Merlin, of course. Come to bring good tidings and word of a quest. Listen, you've bloody lost it. It's quite tragic if you ask me. Go get a fucking haircut and open the megalithic portal app. It's Google Maps for nerds. There you will find what you seek. Closer than you could ever know.
I'm sure I'm not alone in saying this, but for many people, at least where I live, it's been a really hard year. Well, year and a half now. It took me 6 months to make this video. And that last lockdown, well, that was the hardest yet. Brain fog, social anxiety, depression. But worst of all, the connections that tie us all together began to fall apart, even more than before. And of course, we lost people, family members, friends. All through history, the winter has been the reflection time. The end of the year, end of the road. 'Cause 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 huddled around hearthfire, the time when people passed on. But also the time to tell stories. Looking to better days. Summertime calling, way off on the distant horizon. And every so often, when that sun arrives, when the barbecues come out, the shirts come off, for a brief moment, it's hard to recall that bleak winter. And the cycle continues. I spent much of the lockdown reading about archaeology, dreaming of going off adventuring to distant lands. I read about things in my local area too, but couldn't find much. Holy wells are plenty, just like everywhere else around the country. But holy wells don't make for great videos. In terms of impressive monuments, stone circles, hill forts, villas, there just aren't that many left. Living in a well-populated and extremely fertile land, any great monuments of the ancients that once existed were picked apart long ago, scattered to the ages. Unlike in places where intensive agriculture just wasn't possible, like the peaks and the moors, it's entirely possible that once, long ago, vast stone circles, a match for Avebury and Arborough, could have stood here in the plains around Nottingham. Unfortunately, like most aspects of ancient history, we'll just never know. In the 19th century, a piece of a mosaic floor was uncovered at the tiny village of Burton in Fabus, not far away. Once home to a Roman villa, the priceless find was taken out of the ground, carefully placed into bags, and then lost. I can find very little reference at all to any other similar finds in the area. Not too far away, a church built atop the Iron Age hill fort of Brodie on the Hill houses vital Anglo-Saxon items from the ensuing early medieval age. But before that, there's scarce little evidence at all. Even the great fortress itself at Brodie is barely recognisable today, its ramparts having long been mined away. Finally, I discovered the megalithic portal app, a great tool for anyone interested in the ancient past. And I realised Nottingham isn't so blank after all. I saw a string of hill forts encircling my home, each one visible from the other perhaps. A lost Celtic proto-kingdom even. After some more research, Old Ox Camp certainly looked good. And yet, it isn't actually on top of a hill, but nestled into a hollow between peaks. Being, according to one writer, utterly indefensible. An interesting sight for sure, but not a hill fort per se. But one of the forts is different. It was excavated in the early 1950s. If it's good enough for archaeologists, it's good enough for me. I can find absolutely no pictures of the place online. None at all in books. But for better or for worse, local bus ticket in hand, little clue of where I'm headed, off I go on an adventure to Burton Lodge. Let's go. Just 7 miles from Nottingham, on a bend in the River Trent, sits the picturesque village of Burton, Joyce. It's a tiny place, and like many villages on the English landscape, it's been here since before the Norman conquest. Later becoming home to a family descended from Norman knights, it was a tiny, sleepy place until a brief boom in the Industrial Revolution, where, like Nottingham, it gained a reputation in the textile industry. But long before all of that, the place tells a different story too. Arrowheads and blades have been found here, dating all the way back to the Mesolithic era, when hunter-gatherers called the Great Forest of Britain home. Later still, evidence from the first farmers of the Neolithic has been found, bringing cattle and wheat from the far-off Fertile Crescent in their wake. And later still, the Bronze Age. With finds including a set of ring ditches, a rapier, and several spearheads. And during the ensuing Iron Age in the first millennium BC, the place became more important still. For in the early 1950s, the nearby hilltop looming over the village was excavated by the Peveril Group, a local archaeological society, revealing much pottery and material from the late Iron Age and the medieval era. According to the megalithic portal app, a hill fort once stood here, reached by a footpath. Supposedly a homestead moat, its ditch measuring 15 feet wide and 9 deep. Of course, it comes as no surprise that when faced with the general lack of ancient monuments in Nottinghamshire, sites with visible defensive earthworks were obvious targets for excavators. And in the 50s and 60s, ditches were cut not just at Burton Lodge, but at Coombs Farm in Farnsfield, and at Scratter Wood, revealing habitation from the Bronze Age all the way through to the Iron Age. As the number 26 rolls out from the city centre towards Southall, I see council flats and cricket fields, kebab shops and beer gardens, all the echelons of English society. The world seems to be going back to normal. But what of the history of Nottingham itself? Well, it's pretty great, world famous even. Robin Hood, the Sheriff of Nottingham, the Chartist rebels who burnt down the castle, the Galleries of Justice Museum, the caves. Yep, it's a great place to live. But in terms of ancient history, is very little. On record, there are currently 222 entries for Nottinghamshire's ancient sites and monuments relevant to the 1st millennium BC. Yet nearly all of these leave no trace at all on the landscape. Mostly coins, individual pieces of metalwork, and pottery. That may sound like a lot, but compared to most other places, it's really not. During our government-mandated daily exercise, we unknowingly walked past one important site. Radcliffe, sitting on high ground over the Trent. I had a feeling this would have been an important place, and it was. In the 1960s, pre-Roman features and late Bronze Age and Iron Age metalwork were uncovered here at Red Hill, including a brooch with a bird carved onto it. Another place we went walking was Holme Pier Point, where pottery was found in the 1970s and Iron Age logboats in the 60s. Other finds have been made at Dorket Head in Arnold and in Gampston too. Both places I've spent quite a bit of time in with little idea of the history. Most interesting of all for me though are the 10 hill forts of Nottinghamshire that have been tentatively identified from earthworks or documentary sources over the years. As well as 2 square-ditched barrow cemeteries and over 100 settlements identified from crop marks on aerial photography. And yet, this is only a partial view. Vast swathes of Nottinghamshire sits on areas which preserve little evidence of the past. In the claylands of Mercia and the Magnesian limestone, which limits both knowledge and interpretation. But we do have this one site nonetheless, the hill fort at Burton Lodge. So there I was, in a sleepy English village, in search of an ancient hill fort. A walk uphill, a gentle stroll past increasingly large houses. And as I reached the top of the hill, a 15-minute stroll from the bus stop, the land begins to open up all around. I take a right turn on Lodge Farm, heading through the fields on the old path to Lambley. It's incredibly warm, but I don't mind. I'm a little giddy at the history of this place. And here it is. Nature. A horseback riding native passes me by, and after another walk along a lane, I get to a field. According to the app, my prize is just over yonder. Hopping the fence, I go straight through the field until I arrive at another fence. And finally, according to the app, I've arrived. This is the site of the fort. Or is it? There are no earthworks to be seen. But I do find a path. An especially well-maintained one, cutting through a copse of trees. And then I have a thought. Though overgrown now, this must have been the hill fort originally. I was walking at least very close to, if not inside, the original ramparts. long since ploughed away. I begin to see tiny marks on the ground, and my mind wanders. Wishful thinking, no doubt, but you never know. I try to picture what life would have been like for these Celtic inhabitants 2,500 years ago. Just a mile or so over yonder, the Trent sleeks past on the landscape. As important then as it is now. The third longest river in Britain, in clear view of the fort. Though little remains now, this place could have been massive to begin with. Linked up with the other settlements and forts in the Trent Valley. Perhaps integral to the defences and society of this Celtic people. But did they live here permanently? Or was this a site of refuge or transhumance? Just lived in for certain periods of the year, like the pastoralist Arras culture of Yorkshire. Well, it's unclear. It's a debated point at most hill forts, and this one is no exception. Unfortunately, there is a near total lack of analysis in this part of the country. And as I keep wandering through the woodland and beyond, I can see why. I find my way onto Lodge Farm with still no sight of any earthworks. Not long ago, I met a farmer in Cornwall who told me about the destructive power of cows at a place like this. At Castle Door, he and those who'd come before him had declined to use their adult cows to graze, saying that within just a few generations, the place would be reduced to flat ground from grazing and trampling. And it seems that sadly, that's what happened here, leaving just a tiny stretch of the original ramparts. And where those ramparts are, I know not. But it's a great place to visit nonetheless. One of the more interesting hypotheses from the excavations in the 50s related to the Roman coins found here and the Samian ware pottery, with the excavators suggesting that this place could have been the site of a Roman garrison after it was taken from the natives. Much like places further south like Maiden Castle and Hod Hill, taken by the famed general Vespasian. Did he come here too, using it as a strategic military base? It's nearly impossible to say, but as always, it's interesting to wonder. For a brief moment, I think I've found what I'm looking for, in the form of a historical sign, like I've seen at many other sites. But no, it's a mirage. I keep searching through the forest to no avail. Still looking for the bulwark, I head through the farm. I've circled all around by this stage and can find no sign of the earthworks. Another 20 minutes or so pass, and I take refuge in a small clearing by a field. It's time to call in the big guns. And there it is. I think. Mortal, now you have completed my quest. You've unlocked more of the map. It's all just a game, you see, like Skyrim or Fallout. Now, the greatest hill forts in the country await. What are you still here for? Go, heed my words. History awaits.